Yeah, hi. So two of the main strands that we're focusing on in digital insights are learning from entrepreneurs, and the second one are the infrastructure and ecosystem problems, whether it's government funding, whether it's problems with PR, whether it's how do we network, how do we get into touch with angels. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Liz Rice, who's been doing it over there and now is going to do it over here. I know that sounds slightly perverse, but I'll let her explain what she's been doing over there and here. Liz.
Fantastic. Hi. Well, thanks, Iqbal. Yeah, I had the most amazing, fortunate opportunity to go to Silicon Valley for 18 months and build a product. We built something called Through2 with a company called Metaswitch Networks. We had just the most amazing fortune of being a very small team, given a blank piece of paper, go and innovate, build something, preferably in mobile, and work in Sequoia's offices while you're doing it, which, you know, was a fantastic opportunity. And we went from literally that blank piece of paper to 500,000 downloads, which, you know, can't be beaten. And now I'm back in the UK, you know, doing something new.
So do you think you could do that blank piece of paper experiment here in the UK?
I think it's very hard to do that here because there's nobody funding that kind of idea from scratch. Well, at least not that I've found. If you're out there, want to fund something from scratch, come and see me.
So an interesting question there regarding funding, which I know a lot of entrepreneurs come up against here in the UK. Is the funding situation in the UK different? And if so, how is it different? And what is it that we really kind of need to change? I mean, does it suck?
Yeah. So my perspective on this is coming from somebody who, you know, I'm right at the beginning of the funding journey, so there's a ton of stuff about this that I don't know. But my impressions of it are, you know, based on being in Silicon Valley, you'd go and demo a product, and there would be people coming up to you, kind of going, you know, what's your funding situation? You know, how, and they're basically offering you money. And well, that hasn't happened to me yet here. Maybe what I'm working on here isn't such a good idea, but what I believe is the people who have money here are kind of sitting back, waiting for people to come and talk to them. Even worse, if you want to get me on a hobby horse, I cannot stand the idea that an entrepreneur with a great idea would pay to pitch that to an investor. What a crazy idea is that? You know, if the investor thinks it's a good idea, they're going to make money out of it. So, you know, why would I pay?
Paying to pitch is another can of worms, but we'll be exploring that in a later issue, which is it's a thorn in my side as well. But we'll get Bill Morrow onto that one from Angels then sometime. So can you describe a little bit about your learnings? You said 500,000 downloads. What I'm interested in is how did you get the first 100 downloads or the first 1,000 downloads? Yeah. That's what I'm really interested in as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, we had advice from Sequoia basically to work with some marketing consultants who helped us find a really fantastic PR company. And I know there's two schools of thought about PR, but you know, we personally, we learned a lot from the PR company. They knew all the people to talk to. They helped us put together an amazingly complete pitch package, if you like. We had a video that explained what the product was all about. We had, you know, all the messaging succinctly laid out in PowerPoint bullets. The PR company did a great job of reaching out to all the journalists who were really interested in what we were doing, and you know, we got fantastic coverage on day one. And I do think that kind of PR exercise around a launch is something that while you can as a startup do a lot of PR yourself, you know, I learned so much from doing that with a professional PR company who really did a great job. And that day one, we just had this massive peak of downloads.
That's really interesting, because we're always told that the people in the Valley don't pay for PR, and what they normally do is do viral, or they do that low-cost free marketing. And you go to any investor in the UK, they say, no, you must go and get customers the viral way. You don't need to pay for PR, etc. So it's actually quite interesting to see, you know, a VC saying, hey, go out there, do PR and do PR properly. I'm in agreement with that. What would you say in terms of, say in the UK, because the scene is different, how would you go about getting your first 1,000 customers here? Yeah. And I'm putting you on the spot on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I launch my next product, this is how I'll do it. I definitely believe in that same process, that, you know, whoever you are, you know, if you're like one guy in a bedroom building a product on your own, or if you are, you know, a really nicely funded startup with, you know, access to professional PR, that same principle of, if you're going to get users interested in your product, you have to explain to them what it's about. So, you know, spend a little bit of time thinking about how do you describe your product, what's really important about your product, you know, who's going to be interested in that product, and put together as much material as you can usefully do, so that when you go out to the press, you know, you're giving them the information on the plate. You know, I believe that journalists are pretty lazy, that's what they tell me, you know, and if you can give them, you know, all the information they need and tell them why it's an interesting story, then they're more likely to cover you. And you know, while doing stuff virally and sort of saying to your friends, hey, you should try this, goes some way. It doesn't, you know, unless you're spectacularly popular, I think it's not going to get you everywhere. I think it's wise to have that PR messaging prepared as well.
Right, I'm obviously not that popular since it hasn't worked for me. Just so, moving from the customer acquisition thread a little bit more to product development, because I think you did product development over at Skype.
Product management.
Product management, sorry, product management. You know, you say potatoes, I say potatoes.
Building stuff.
Building stuff. That's it. Building stuff. Name a couple of tools which are really useful in the product development, building stuff cycle. That entrepreneur that you would.
Kind of as an engineer, or.
Yeah, whether it's as an engineer, whether it's a kind of a SaaS-based product, which you say, you know what, from a management point of view, I would use this tool. If you're going to build anything, whether wireframe tool, design tool, I'm going to use this thing. Just some tools that you've actually used, which are really good.
Okay. So a recent thing that I just worked on for a couple of months, we put together a product. It's actually about Twitter, about engaging with people on Twitter. It's called an app called Jack. Got to get a quick plug in for that one. And building that, I came across Twitter Bootstrap, which I guess there's a little bit of controversy about whether it makes all sites look the same, but definitely as somebody with an engineering background and not a great deal of design skills, it did enable me to really, really, really quickly put something together that looks quite attractive, if I say so myself. So Twitter Bootstrap, definitely a really good starting point if you're building a HTML kind of site. It's got all the JavaScript and CSS that you really want to make something look pretty neat. Good for a first start. It's another tool that I'm a big fan of is MailChimp. You know, everybody's got to get their message out, and MailChimp, you know, gives you a really good free deal for I don't know how many thousands of users you can have for free, but it's a pretty good deal, and really flexible about the templating and auto responding that you can do, so that you can guide users through a journey. You know, you can send them that welcome email, and then you can send them a follow-up email 3 days later to ask them how they're getting on, which is all part of that sort of the user journey, looking after them, making them feel loved and welcomed, and helping them if they are struggling with any problems with your product.
So two last questions. As an entrepreneur, they say you should always be pitching. So I'm going to ask you what your elevator pitch is, and the second one I've just forgotten. What was my second question? What is it that you need? You know, two things that you need. You know, you've helped us a little bit, and if people can hear this video and say, hey, I can help build a startup, it's great for us. So what's the elevator pitch, and what are the two things that you need?
Okay, so right now I'm working on a product called Tanktop TV. It's about on-demand TV listings, so helping you find programs that you'd really like to watch in amongst all the, you know, 2,000, 4,000, whatever programs that are available to you from all different services. And what do I need to build it? I would love to find a designer who is really, really passionate about on-demand TV and that kind of entertainment ecosystem, because design skills I don't have. I'd love to meet a really good designer.
Okay. So the lady needs a designer, and she's going to help you watch TV better, or make TV watching better.
Yeah, make it really easy to find stuff that you love.
Okay. Liz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.